The Israelis, though, used their influence to circumvent the intelligence channels. And then they also had their surrogates within the media come and echo to President Trump via Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and say, hey, the red line is zero enrichment. And they said it enough, they made it repetitive enough through multiple avenues that President Trump was led to believe that his red line has to be zero enrichment.
When former intelligence officials and combat veterans start saying the quiet part out loud on corporate television, you know the narrative isn't just leaking, it's bursting at the seams. Joe Kent, a retired Green Beret and President Trump's former director of the National Counterterrorism Center, sat down on Piers Morgan Uncensored and laid out an unprecedented insider breakdown. He explained step by step how Benjamin Netanyahu's government and Israeli intelligence intentionally bypassed official U.S. intelligence channels to build a neoconservative media echo chamber around Donald Trump. Their target? Dragging the United States into a war with Iran that American intelligence explicitly warned was unnecessary. When veterans, foreign policy realists, and even mainstream Democrats are admitting that foreign governments are driving American foreign policy at the expense of American workers, the whole structure starts to crumble. If you believe in real accountability, real receipts, and putting people over profit, take a second to hit that subscribe button. I'm Neil. This is The Honest Perspective. Foreign policy shouldn't be dictated by foreign capitals or military-industrial lobbyists. Let's get into it.
I mean, Joe Kent, this is one of the more unsavory. Well, I'll use the term I feel is appropriate. Joe Kent, I mean, this idea
Fine,
that
and
you
I'll
can't
criticize
use
you
certain
for
phrases,
it.
terms.
And I'll criticize you for it. You can say what you want, and I can say what I want. That's what the open marketplace of ideas is all about.
100%. We are, and especially on a show like Uncensored. Okay. You're entitled to your opinion.
We agree to
about
disagree.
The use of a phrase. Okay. I'm entitled to it too. Yeah, Joe Kent.
That's right.
You know, I do believe that there's been enormous pressure, Joe Kent, from Benjamin Netanyahu to literally try and dictate what America would do. And I think he did it. He tried to do it with Obama. He tried to do it with Joe Biden, and he failed. We know that from Antony Blinken, who told us that he tried. And both times the American president said, I'm not coming with you if you attack Iran. And Israel did not attack Iran in either eventuality. So we know that here he found a president that would go along with it. And it's turned into, I think, a bit of a disaster here. What is your reading of that?
Yeah, I would more accurately describe it as a echo chamber that was created around President Trump. So what the Israelis do a very effective job of is they do punch way above their weight class. The Israelis, and this is on us, this is on the U.S. government's, this is our fault, we give them more access than they should have, than any foreign country should have. So what I witnessed over the last year was official engagements from members of Benjamin Netanyahu's government, the Israeli government, come and have official engagements with members of our government and say things like Iran can't have any enrichment.
Pause right there. Look at what Joe Kent is actually describing. He isn't talking about standard diplomacy. He's describing a deliberate, coordinated effort by a foreign government to outflank the official U.S. national security apparatus. When Mossad Director David Barnea or Netanyahu's cabinet sit in Washington and push a zero enrichment narrative, they are setting up a trap. They knew the Trump administration's stated target was stopping a nuclear weapon, not peaceful enrichment. But by manipulating the framing, they pushed the goalposts out of reach of diplomatic resolution. Let's keep watching as Kent breaks down how they used conservative media outlets to feed this narrative straight back to the White House.
The policy has to be zero enrichment, when in fact President Trump had just said the policy was no nuclear weapon. And you'll see President Trump echo that in his talking points now. And the former Supreme Leader, before we killed him, agreed with that. And that got both President Trump and the Supreme Leader to the negotiating table. And so for almost a year, we saw constructive negotiations between us and the Iranian government. This was a direct threat to the Israelis. The Israelis told us this much. The Mossad director, David Barnea, specifically said that their goal was regime change in Iran. They weren't very shy about that whatsoever. And so they used their access through official channels through official channels to circumvent the intelligence community, because anytime that the Israelis said the Iranians are 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon, they're making a nuclear weapon, the U.S. intelligence community, we would go and we would do our due diligence, we would check that, and we would find that the Iranian internal prohibition on developing a nuclear weapon was still holding. As a matter of fact, the Iranians were also withholding their proxies from attacking us as well. That's what the U.S. intelligence community agreed on. DNI Gabbard testified to that publicly twice in front of Congress. The Israelis, though, used their influence to circumvent the intelligence channels. And then they also had their surrogates within the media come and echo to President Trump via Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and say, hey, the red line is zero enrichment. And they said it enough, they made it repetitive enough through multiple avenues that President Trump was led to believe that his red line has to be zero enrichment. To take the issue off the table, we conducted Midnight Hammer. We totally obliterated their ability to enhance and enrich uranium. But then the Israelis came right back and said, hey, no, there's still more uranium there. You have to go in and physically get it. You have to control it, because the goal for the Israelis at that point was still regime change. And so they used their outsized influence on our government to drive this war. And when they thought they weren't going to get the war, they then said, we're going to go in, we're going to conduct attacks against the Iranians. We're going to target their supreme leader, which we knew from studying the intelligence and Iranian doctrine over the last several decades would result in the Iranians then attacking our bases in the region. So Marco Rubio is 100% accurate when he said there was no imminent attack against us being planned by the Iranians. The only thing that was imminent was the Israelis conducting that attack. That drove us into this conflict. And that should make every American take pause and think, what is our relationship with this country of Israel? Why are we letting them drive us into yet another war in the Middle East? How vital is it that we have control over the Straits of Hormuz?
Well, also, I mean, Alan, before you respond to Israel, Alan, hang on 1 second.
Sure.
Hang on, but before you respond, I want to play. I think it's a good time to play the Rahm Emanuel comments.
Pay attention to what was just admitted on tape. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard testified under oath, twice, that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon and that internal prohibitions were holding. Yet, as Kent points out, foreign officials bypass those verified intelligence findings by feeding talking points through media surrogates like Fox News and the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, creating a feedback loop aimed straight at the president. And remember Secretary of State Marco Rubio's public slip-up? He admitted America struck preemptively because Israel was going to strike anyway, knowing it would trigger Iranian attacks on American bases. That isn't U.S. defense strategy. That's being maneuvered into a war. Now look at how Alan Dershowitz and peers react when former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel suggests treating Israel like any other normal ally.
On the Bill Maher show on Friday, which were very interesting about why he believes America should no longer subsidize Israel militarily. Let's take a look at this.
We don't subsidize Great Britain buying weapons. We don't supply or financial assistance to Japan. Israel's a very wealthy nation. There should be no more taxpayer support for what they want to do. And they get the same deal that any one of our allies do. They have to abide by the laws of the United States if they're going to buy X weapons. And that's how it should be constructed. Jake's point, and I agree with this, is the Prime Minister went to this president like he's gone to 4 other presidents. And every one of the other presidents said, not a chance are we doing that because the equities are not worth it. This president bought it. He has responsibility as a commander-in-chief, and I think he made a big mistake for it.
Do you disagree with Rahm Emanuel?
Not greatly. Not greatly. The United States told Menachem Begin not to attack the Iraq nuclear reactor. They told Ehud Olmert not to attack the Syrian nuclear reactor. In both cases, Israel decided what was best for its own interest. As Olmert told Bush, I am the Prime Minister of Israel. You're the President of the United States. You do what's best for your country. I do what's best for my country. In both cases, they destroyed nuclear reactors. If Iraq had had nuclear weapons at the time of the Iraq War, it would have been devastating. So, Israel has acted very independently. As far as Israel getting aid, remember, it's a two-way street. Israel gets military aid, which it must spend on American companies, helping them to develop both American and Israeli weapons. Let's remember some of the most important weapons used both in Israel and the Middle East and used by Ukraine were developed jointly between Israel and the United States. The relationship, the military and intelligence relationship between Israel and the United States is a two-way street. Yes, Israel is a small country, the United States is a large country, and Israel punches above its weight, to quote your guests, when it comes to providing intelligence, when it comes to providing military aid, helping to develop Iron Dome and other kinds of informations. So it's an incredibly mutually productive alliance that should continue. Now, should Israel get special treatment? Every country is treated differently. Israel gets military aid, but it must spend that aid in the United States on American companies, which it then uses to help to develop materials that are beneficial to both countries. So it's complicated and it's nuanced, and it shouldn't go back to the notion of somehow Israel is pulling all the strings, Israel is making all the decisions. The United States makes decisions that are essential to its survival. That was true of President Reagan. That was true of President Bush. That's true of President Trump. It was true of President Clinton. And no Israeli ever tells America what to do. America does tell Israel what to do. Oftentimes, Israel would like to go further, and America says it can't. Sometimes Israel disobeys, as it did with Syria and Iraq, to the benefit of the United States. But most often, it complies with American demands, as it has in Lebanon and as it did in Iran.
What we just watched is a textbook demonstration of how foreign policy commentary and corporate media collapses the moment actual facts are introduced. Alan Dershowitz tries to brush off Rahm Emanuel's proposal by using the oldest line in the military-industrial playbook, claiming U.S. aid isn't really a handout to Israel because the money is spent back inside the United States on American defense contractors. Let's dissect that claim, because it exposes the corporate scam at the center of Washington foreign policy. When U.S. taxpayers fund foreign military financing FMF, billions of dollars are funneled directly from working-class Americans straight into the pockets of Lockheed, Martin, Raytheon, and General Dynamics. It is a circular taxpayer-funded subsidy for war profiteers, wrapped up in the flag of national security. Emanuel's point, and Joe Kent's point, is undeniable. Israel is a high-income, technologically advanced economy. The U.S. doesn't give weapons grants to the United Kingdom, Japan, or France. They buy their weapons through standard foreign military sales, adhering strictly to U.S. statutory requirements like the Arms Export Control Act and the Foreign Assistance Act. Under U.S. law, specifically Section 502B of the Foreign Assistance Act, security assistance is prohibited to any country that engages in a consistent pattern of gross violations of internationally recognized human rights. Yet, for decades, corporate politicians on both sides of the aisle have granted a unique exemption to Israel, overriding U.S. domestic law and undermining American credibility. What makes Joe Kent's testimony so devastating to the standard Washington narrative is where it comes from. Kent isn't a left-wing activist. He's a Gold Star husband, a 20-year Special Forces veteran, and President Trump's confirmed director of the National Counterterrorism Center. When an official at that level steps forward to detail how Israeli intelligence units and Washington think tanks systematically ignored U.S. intelligence to manufacture consent for a war, it confirms what critics have said for years. U.S. foreign policy has been hijacked by a foreign state's strategic interests. Look at the contrast in that room. You have Alan Dershowitz claiming that no Israeli ever tells America what to do, while simultaneously defending U.S. military strikes that were explicitly triggered by Israeli threats to act unilaterally. It's an absurd contradiction. The reality is that American voters across the political spectrum, from progressive anti-war coalitions to working-class Maga voters, are exhausted by endless Middle Eastern conflicts that drain trillions of dollars, disrupt global supply chains, and risk catastrophic escalation, all while domestic infrastructure, healthcare, and cost of living crumble at home. When corporate media commentators try to frame any pushback against foreign government influence as untruthful or taboo, they do it because they cannot defend the policy on its actual merits. They cannot explain why working Americans should underwrite foreign militaries, guarantee foreign borders, or send troops into harm's way based on manufactured red lines that our own intelligence agencies debunked. The receipts are clear. U.S. intelligence reported Iran was not pursuing a weapon. Foreign actors pushed a false red line anyway. U.S. officials admitted we were pulled into action by regional escalation, and the American public is left holding the bill. If you believe in holding war profiteers accountable, putting working people over corporate defense budgets, and demanding foreign policy rooted in truth rather than foreign influence, subscribe to The Honest Perspective. I'm Neil. Truth over access. People over profits. That's The Honest Perspective, and that's where I'll leave you.